Привет из Сингапура! С вами передача «Голубь мира», где разбираем крутые навыки. Спрашиваем на английском, отвечаем на русском. Подтягивайте язык или смотрите перевод в тайм-кодах. Let's talk about infographics and let's start with the definition.
Infographics, it's the kind of art, and it was invented like 100 years ago, or maybe 110. It was a small newspaper in one town, and it was a publisher who notes that if you will put just a text in newspaper, it was be read not so carefully. But if you will print some kind of graphics or diagram, the people will look attentively and they will spend more time with the newspaper. And they were saying it is the better to print some graphic than to print like 100 or 1000 words. And scientists lately were researching this topic, and they found yes, it is right. When you find the way how to show people something, they will look at it very attentively. For example, one way I will say you that, for example, we dig a huge hole in the land to build a skyscraper, and it was a huge, like I don't know how many tons of the ground were taken out. Or another way, I will say, we put from the earth the amount of ground which is equal to the pyramid of Cheops in Egypt, and you will think, wow, it is quite a huge amount. It is the same occasion, but it was described in different ways.
Indeed, there is even the proven proverb that you actually mentioned about disproportional difference between the humongous difference between one picture and the count of the words. So what are the fundamentals of the skills that actually could make it efficient?
If you just put graphics, or if you will make some picture, it is not enough to name it infographics. It should be easy understandable for people of different age. For 10 years old and for 70 years old, it would be understandable the same. So you should take into account the difference in IQ. Second, never use just one dimension. You use 2, 3, or even some Pascal eggs you should put in the infographics. And last one, find the best way, not just one way, but the best way. For example, I was looking sometime for infographics, and I am wondering, wow, how cool they made it. For example, it was a movie about narco cartel in Mexico. It about not a Pablo Escobar, but I don't know, El Chapo. And they were drawing kind of the tree, the roots, the wooden part, the branches, the leaves, and everything was signed. Who was making this or that? And I was not familiar with these people and this gang, but even now I couldn't understand why and how they make this wood appear in the movie.
So actually, we can say that infographics might be one of the powerful ways of delivering certain message, or maybe even the context or the concept to the people. So when it comes to the ways of levels of how people could do this in terms of scalability, efficiency, or maybe for how long the people will understand what someone else said, what are the levels or steps the one could take in order to have the perfect infographics?
First level, you just make it black and white. You take into account it will be printed in newspaper and they are not colored ones. So you just use not enough tools to have a complexity. Another way, you make it, for example, three-dimensional and colorful, and you will use some shaped objects. For example, right now I am writing an article about Kaliningrad, how in the weeks, in the days, in the hours is demand for the bars, restaurants, and some other facilities and utilities. And for example, for some kind of graphics, I use metaphor. It is like a whale. So it is starting with tail, then big head, and so on. Or sometimes I write, it is like a cardiogram. It is well shaped, like a saw. So you try to help people to remember how it looks like. And another way, when you find the very right objects in comparison. For example, you can say that if I will take the sun, it is like watermelon. And when we take our Earth, has a size of, I could remember how to say маковое зернышко.
Need to think about it.
Okay.
And when it comes to the certain mistakes that people could actually make when they're trying to deliver the messages, and again, like maybe the way they communicated was wrong, or maybe the tool that they used was wrong, or maybe the audience understanding was also wrong. What are the things people could do different in order to be efficient in delivering a good quality of infographics?
You know, maybe the best book I was ever read about infographics, it was Gene Железный talk on the language of the diagrams. It was the person who was working for McKinsey for a very long time, and he write a fascinating book. For example, when he was talking about death of the people, he was not putting the just line on the graphics, but he was putting coffins one on another, and you will see how many coffins is drawn, and you will understand. Or for example, he was talking about corns and how huge density of the corns we use right now. And when you see in comparison, it is quite understandable. Or if he was talking about how fast in the days we could grow our, for example, chickens. And 50 years ago, it was like 60 days, and it was a really small and thin chicken. And right now we could do the chicken 5 times heavier in 3 times faster.
And when it comes to the way to express or give certain meaning to the certain objects, what could be specific here? And maybe I can give a couple of examples of what exactly I mean. For example, let's say for certain items that require attention, you might be using the red color. For the database, you might be using the cylinder shape. So what are the common rules it's better to use in order to make sure that that message was be taken correctly by your audience?
The main message here, it would be you could use the suitable shape and object. For example, when you talk about ocean, yes, you could write, for example, aquariums, maybe fish, maybe octopus, maybe shell. You should think what is suits the better. Second, never use complex objects. For example, if you will found something like a small bone in the, for example, hand, and you will draw the full hand to show just small bone, no one would understand. It is too complex, and it is not easy to disassemble if you're talking about lab or you're talking about finger or bone. And third one, you should be as simple as possible. So never use too complex objects. For example, when you're talking about money, never use currency which are not known on the territory.
And when it comes to combining the infographics with other types of the representing the information, what could be the specifics here? Like, for example, let's say if you want to draw the user attention or the customer attention to the table, or maybe we just want to look into the paragraph or text. So how we should consider the information and the audience and the way to deliver the combined version of it, and or whether even it's applicable.
When I was on the training, 1 week training in America, it was a creative center of leadership. There were a lot of infographics on the walls, on the tables, on some other parts of the building, and even in the park. For example, there were some kind of, I don't know how to say, кран, который вода течет. How to say? Pipe with drinking water.
Pipe.
Yes, yeah. And they were showing how many drops will follow if you will switch. You forgot to switch it off, and suddenly I realized that it is a huge amount of the water, and there were small fish which was laying drying on the sun because lack of the water, because I was spending it. Another way it was do not use too much toilet paper, and also it was shown how many trees Americans should cut to make so many toilet papers. And another one, it was about electricity. How many starving people in Africa could be fed if I will switch off this выключатель, switcher properly?
I guess one of the point of the infographics is delivering the message and also show all of the dependencies that the customer or the user or the consumer of this infographics would never think of, so that the information and the context is way more powerful so that they can do certain actions that is expected by the presenter. Last question will be how knowing about infographics would help to make this world a better place.
Sometimes you couldn't explain to people something very important because you know, but they don't want to listen. For example, when I was on Maldives, each time I found people who do not want to preserve the nature. They throw cans in the ocean, or they use some kind of unapplicable materials, and it is harm for the sea creatures. When I was in Mexico, I found one huge park, and there were a small shop near the enter to it, and it was written, "Our sun cream do not harm the sea creatures. Please buy it and throw away your own." And it was really impressive. Maybe that they do not empty garbage bin for weeks, and it was a huge mounting from the old-fashioned sunscreen, and was showing how we harm the planet.
As they said in one of the songs, you don't know what you've got until it's gone. А мы рассмотрели навык инфографика и чем он полезен именно вам. Всем мира!